My backyard chicken coop was legal. He hated it. One day, I found the gate open and 2 hens missing. No tracks. Just silence. So I installed a camera, hidden. The footage I have now isn't just disturbing. It's leverage. And I haven't even used it yet. I live just outside Franklin, Tennessee, in a quiet area where most houses sit on half-acre lots. Not country, but not packed in either. I bought my place 6 years ago after my divorce. It's not big, but it's mine. I spent the first year fixing it up. Painted it myself, tore out some old bushes, built raised beds for vegetables. A year later, I added the coop. 6 hens. No rooster. I checked every local ordinance before I bought them. No HOA. Just county rules, and I followed them. The hens stayed quiet, laid eggs like clockwork, and became part of my daily rhythm. Wake up, coffee, check the girls, collect the eggs. Some days, that's all that felt solid. The problem started when Mark moved in. Mark bought the house next door after the old owners died. The place sat empty for months. I met him the first weekend he was there. Seemed like a regular guy at first, mid-50s, divorced, real estate type. He had a firm handshake but a weird way of looking at you too long. He asked about the chickens right away. "You planning on adding a rooster?" he asked, standing by our shared fence. "No, just hens," I said. "They're legal." Pretty quiet. He didn't smile. Just nodded, like he didn't like the answer but couldn't say anything yet. I brushed it off. But he didn't. Over the next few weeks, he kept bringing it up. Little comments. "Sure hope they don't attract predators. Smells a little ripe over here lately. I read something about chicken diseases spreading to people. You ever worry about that?" Always said with a fake smile, like he was trying to sound casual. But it got under my skin. Then came the noise complaint. He called the city. Claimed my hens were loud in the mornings. Animal control came out, checked the coop, and said everything looked fine. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. I started catching him watching from his window. Once when I was cleaning the coop, I looked up and saw him standing there, staring. He didn't move. Just kept watching. That was the first time I felt nervous. Like maybe this wasn't just a neighbor being nosy. Maybe it was something else. I didn't sleep well that night. A few weeks later, I came out one morning and saw the coop gate open. 2 hens were gone. I froze. It didn't make sense. The latch was one of those double hook kinds. You have to lift and slide it. I always check it at night. Always. There were no feathers. No tracks. No sign of struggle. Just silence. The other hens were huddled in the corner, scared. I stood there for 10 minutes just staring, trying to make sense of it. I walked the whole yard. Nothing. It didn't feel random. I didn't want to think it was Mark. That felt crazy. But I couldn't shake the feeling. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Instead, I went to the hardware store and bought a trail cam. Camouflage. Motion activated. Hunters use them for deer. I hid it behind my rose bush, aimed right at the coop. You'd never see it unless you knew where to look. 2 weeks went by. Nothing happened. Then I checked the footage one night. And there he was. Mark. On my property. 1:34 a.m. gloves on. He moved like he'd done it before. Calm. He walked to the coop, opened the latch, pulled out a hen, and stuffed her into a black bag. Then he walked off, right past the bush where the camera was hidden. I watched it again. And again. Not because I didn't believe it, but because I didn't feel anything yet. I expected rage. But all I felt was cold. Like something inside me went quiet. Like I'd been waiting for this without knowing it. I didn't go to the police. Not yet. Because suddenly, this wasn't about chickens. It was about power. And now I had some. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was scared that had passed. I stayed up because I was thinking, what kind of man does that? Sneaks into someone's yard in the middle of the night, steals a live animal, and disappears? It wasn't about the chickens. Not really. It was about getting to me. The next morning, I printed a still image from the video. Just one frame. His face wasn't clear, but his shape, posture, and coat were obvious. I slid it into an envelope, no note, and dropped it in his mailbox. I waited. Nothing happened for 2 days. Then Saturday morning, I caught him standing at his back door. Just standing there, staring over at my yard. No expression. Just locked eyes with me for a second too long. Then he went back inside. Later that afternoon, I got a knock at the door. It was Mark. "Hey," he said, calm, almost friendly. "Got a weird letter. No return address." I didn't answer. I just looked at him. He looked past me into the house, then said, "Some people would call that harassment. Some people would call trespassing a crime," I said. He stared at me again, like he wanted to say more, then smiled. "Have a good day," he said, and walked off. That's when it started. The hose I kept by the garden? Slashed. The compost bin I'd spent 2 summers building? Knocked over and dumped into the flower bed. Every few days, something small. A tool missing. A section of my fence loosened. A weird smell by the coop. But I never saw him do it. I kept checking the camera, but it was like he knew exactly where it was now. He never showed up on it again. Then one night, around 2 a.m., I heard the chickens making noise. Not loud, just uneasy. I looked outside. Nothing. But when I walked out with a flashlight, I found a dead rat in the coop. Just lying there. Not chewed up. No sign of attack. Like it had been placed. That broke something in me. It wasn't about animals. It wasn't even about property. It was about control. And he was trying to scare me. But I wasn't scared. I started keeping a notebook. I logged every little thing. Dates, times, photos. I repositioned the camera. Bought a second one and hid it in a different spot. I made copies of the footage. Uploaded them to cloud storage. Sent one to a lawyer friend in Nashville just in case. I was quiet. Careful. I didn't respond to anything he did. Until I noticed something strange. My neighbor 2 doors down, an older woman named Carla, stopped talking to me. She used to wave, say hello, even bring over cookies now and then. Then suddenly nothing. Not even a glance. I asked her if something was wrong. She looked uncomfortable. Said, "I just don't like being in the middle of things." That hit me sideways. I asked what she meant, but she just shook her head and walked back inside. Something else was going on. A week later, a letter arrived. From the city. A formal complaint, claiming I was running a commercial poultry operation without a permit. That I was selling eggs illegally. That my coop violated sanitation codes. It was all made up. I don't sell eggs. I give a few to neighbors. That's it. But someone was pushing hard to shut me down. Mark. I knew it. But I didn't have proof of that part, not yet. So I waited. Until I got a knock at my door late one night. And everything changed. It was nearly midnight. I never get visitors that late. I stood still for a second, heart thudding, before I opened the door. It was Carla. She looked nervous. Her eyes kept darting toward Mark's house. "I shouldn't be here," she said right away, "but I think you should know something." I stepped aside and let her in. She didn't sit. Just stood near the door and said, "He's been talking about you. Telling people you're unstable. That you're harassing him. He said you threatened him." "I've never even..." "I know," she said quickly. I didn't believe him. At first. But he's convincing. Said he had proof. Said you've been sneaking into his yard. Leaving things on his porch. I felt sick. "He's flipping the whole thing," I said quietly. Carla nodded. "He's been talking to neighbors. Dropping comments at HOA meetings, even though we're not in one. Stirring people up. Saying your chickens are attracting rats and snakes. That the smell's lowering property values." And people believe that. She didn't answer right away. "He's good at planting doubt," she finally said. And, honestly, people don't like conflict. They'd rather side with the quiet guy who waves and smiles than the woman with chickens and drama. She looked embarrassed when she said it. I thanked her. She left quickly. That night I sat down and really thought about what was happening. This man wasn't just annoying. He was strategic. He was trying to isolate me, ruin my name, break me down before I could fight back. And it was working slowly. but I still had the footage. And now I had something else. I started digging. Late into the night, I looked up everything I could about him. It took a while, but eventually, I found an old court record, sealed but listed. 10 years ago. Out of state. A civil suit filed by a woman with his same last name. No details, but it was labeled property harassment. I couldn't access the files, but the name stuck with me. Over the next few days, I kept to myself. Didn't show any signs I knew more. I started driving my trash to a different bin so he couldn't go through it. I added a lock to the coop, not just the gate, but the whole enclosure. Then I made one final move. I left my garden gate cracked open, just enough to tempt someone in. And I moved the second camera. This time, I aimed it not at the coop but at the side path leading from his yard to mine. 3 nights passed. Nothing. Then the 4th night he came. Gloves again. Same coat. He crept along the side fence. But he didn't go to the coop. He went to my house. That's what stunned me. He walked right up to the side door and crouched like he was trying to see under the door frame. Then he left something. I didn't go out right away. I waited until sunrise. Then I stepped outside. A single egg. Smashed against the door. Deliberate. Quiet. Like a warning. I checked the footage. Clear as day. And I realized he's escalating. This wasn't about the hens anymore. It was about getting inside my head. And I had to decide, was I going to expose him? Or use the footage for something else entirely? I didn't tell anyone what he left on the door. Not yet. Not even Carla. Instead, I printed out the new footage, this time full face, clear body, timestamp. Him crouching by my door, leaving the egg. I made copies. Tucked one into an envelope with no return address, and mailed it to the city code enforcement office with a note. This man has entered my property 3 times a night. I have more footage. Please advise. I didn't expect them to act. Honestly, I didn't think they'd even reply. But 3 days later, I got a call. A woman from the city asked if I could come in and talk. Not about my chickens, about a potential trespassing investigation. She didn't give details, just said someone in their office took the complaint seriously. I went in the next morning, and I brought a flash drive. I played the clips on their office monitor. Mark. Over and over. Gloves. Bag. The coop. Then later, the egg. The woman didn't say much at first, just took notes. Then she asked, "Have you filed a police report?" I told her no. I wanted a record first. Documentation. That's when she leaned forward and said something I didn't expect. "You're not the first person to file something on him." "What do you mean?" "I can't tell you details," she said, "but let's just say, people have patterns." I left the office feeling something I hadn't in months. Validated. But also something else. Worried. Because if he'd done this before, if he had a pattern, then this wasn't going to stop. Not unless someone made him. That night, I came home and found a note under a rock on my porch. No envelope. Just a single line on a ripped receipt paper. Stop playing games. No signature. Just that. I didn't sleep. I checked every lock. Sat in the living room with the lights off. I wanted to see if he'd come back. He didn't. But something else happened 2 days later. I got home from work and found my coop door ripped clean off the hinge. All 4 hens were gone. Not one feather. Just 4 shallow holes in the dirt where they'd been nesting that morning. And something snapped in me. Not grief. Not shock. Resolve. He'd just made his biggest mistake. Because I wasn't scared anymore. I was going to make sure this followed him for the rest of his life. I called the police this time. Not because I thought they'd solve anything. I just needed the report. A record. I showed them the broken coop, the empty yard, the footage. They took photos, wrote it up, asked if I had any idea who might have done this. I didn't say his name out loud. I wanted to see how far this would go without me feeding it. They said they'd follow up, but I knew what that meant. Nothing. So I took a different route. I sent a new flash drive to every neighbor on our street. All 12 houses. No note. Just footage. The break-ins. The egg. The stolen hens. I mailed them anonymously from a post office 1 town over. Within 48 hours, I noticed a shift. Two people who hadn't spoken to me in months suddenly waved when I walked past. Carla dropped off a pie. A guy from the far corner house, someone I'd never even met, came over and said, "I'm sorry we didn't believe you." But Mark? He disappeared. Not literally, but his presence, the stairs, the pacing along the fence line, it stopped. Curtains stayed drawn. No lights in the backyard. It was like he'd gone still. Until one night, 2 weeks later, I heard tires screech outside. A truck. Black. Big. Parked across the street from my house. Lights off. I watched from behind the curtain. A man got out, not Mark. Someone else. Short, stocky, hoodie pulled low. He walked to my driveway, looked around, and then left a box by the steps. Then he got back in the truck and drove off. No plates. I waited 15 minutes, then stepped outside and looked. The box wasn't sealed. Just flaps tucked in. Inside. One dead hen. One of mine. Her leg tagged with a piece of yellow twine. And a Polaroid photo. Of me. Standing in my backyard, months ago, bending over the coop. Taken from above, maybe from his second-floor window. That was when I understood. This wasn't just about harassment anymore. It was about surveillance. About being watched. For months. I went inside and locked every door. Sat down. And finally started writing down the one plan I hadn't tried yet. Because this wasn't just going to end with him being exposed. It was going to end with him being ruined. The next morning, I didn't call the police. I didn't need another useless report. I needed this to land where it hurt. So, I made a list. Names. Numbers. Agencies. Local Animal Control. Department of Agriculture. Zoning and Code Enforcement. The State Board for Real Estate Licensing, because yes, I'd finally confirmed he still had an active license. And I filed every report I could. Anonymous when it needed to be. Named when it counted. Each report included images. Time-stamped videos. Copies of the anonymous package and the photo of me. Everything organized. Labeled. The thing about people like Mark? They rely on silence. They count on people being too scared or too embarrassed to fight back. And most of the time, they're right. But I wasn't scared anymore. I was furious. I wasn't going to threaten him. I wasn't going to show up at his door. I wasn't going to give him anything he could twist around. But I was going to let the weight of every agency he thought didn't care finally come down on him at the same time. And then, 2 weeks later, it started. First, it was Code Enforcement, a notice posted on his door. Then Animal Control, asking to inspect his trash bins and backyard for evidence of improper disposal of wildlife remains. The zoning office opened a case file. Then something even better happened. A woman named Naomi emailed me. She got my name from one of the state contacts I listed in my reports. She used to live next door to Mark. In Georgia. 5 years ago. He did it to me too, she wrote. We talked on the phone for an hour. She told me about how her cats went missing. How Mark filed complaints about her fence, about noise, about made-up smells. How the last straw was when someone left a bag of animal feces on her doorstep. She moved away. Sold the house at a loss. She never filed anything. She was too drained. I asked her if she'd be willing to give a statement. She said yes. That was when I started building a file I didn't plan to send anywhere. Not to agencies. Not to the police. I was building it for his employer. His real estate brokerage was mid-sized, well-reviewed, family-run, and very public about being community first. They had a website with staff bios, a company Instagram, Facebook, even a charity fund. I printed screenshots. Pulled together every documented act of trespass. Every photo. Every timestamp. And I made a package that told a story. Not just about Mark, but about who he really was behind those smiling listings and friendly open houses. And I had it delivered. Certified. To the office of the broker who ran the agency. No threats. No cover letter. Just the truth in order. That same week, his photo disappeared from their website. 3 days later, a for sale sign went up in his yard. And yet, I didn't feel relief. Because I knew this wasn't over. People like him don't just vanish. They wait. And watching my mailbox every day now feels like flipping a coin. It took less than a week after the for sale sign went up for things to get strange again. First, the house went dark. No porch light, no cars. The blinds stayed closed even during the day. But the sign didn't change, no under contract, no flyers in the box. Just still. Then one night I noticed movement. 2:12 a.m. I was awake, I sleep light now, like something in me's always bracing. Out of habit, I checked the live feed on my trail cam app. I'd added a third one by then, aimed across my backyard toward the rear fence line. Just in case. There he was. Not near the house. Not in the yard. In the woods behind it.
Mark.
Hunched low, wearing a hoodie, flashlight pointed at the ground like he was looking for something. Not walking toward my property, just pacing the tree line, like he was waiting. I didn't go outside. But I stayed up the rest of the night, watching. He didn't come closer. By morning he was gone. That same day, I called the agent listed on his for sale sign. Just asked casually, as a neighbor with interest, if the property had any offers. She sounded surprised. Actually, it was never officially listed. What do you mean? The sign's up, but we don't have a signed agreement yet. The seller's been non-responsive. That was all she'd say. That night, I walked the perimeter of my yard. Checked every lock, every camera, every inch of wire. And when I reached the back fence, something caught my eye. A small plastic bag. Tied shut. Dangling from a branch, just on the other side. I used a stick to pull it over, careful not to touch it with bare hands.
Inside. 2 things.
One of my hens' ID leg bands.
Blue.
I recognized it. And a thumb drive. I didn't plug it in right away. I didn't trust it. I drove to the library instead, used a public terminal and opened the contents. One video.
Granny, bad Lily.
It showed a chicken coop. Not mine, but similar. And a man walking up to it with a crowbar. The footage cut before anything happened, but it was clear what it implied. There was a note in the same folder.
Typed.
No name. You're not the only one who watches. My chest went tight. Because I realized this wasn't just about retaliation anymore. He wanted me to know he'd been inside someone else's life, too. Maybe Naomi's. Maybe another woman. Maybe more than one. It was a message. Not I'm done. But I can keep going. I kept the thumb drive. I didn't show it to anyone. Not yet. I made a copy, like always, but the original stayed sealed in a Ziploc in my freezer. Somewhere he wouldn't expect. Somewhere I'd remember. I changed my routine after that. I parked one street over. Took different routes home. Covered the cameras with branches during the day. Started wearing sunglasses even in the yard. Not because I was afraid of him hurting me. That fear had passed. What I was afraid of now was what I might do if I ever caught him face to face. Because by now, this wasn't about chickens. It wasn't about property lines. It was about how much of my life had been quietly taken. He made me a stranger in my own space. He made people I liked doubt me. He made me doubt me, more than once. Then one afternoon, Carla knocked on my door. She held up her phone. Look, she said. He sent this to my husband. It was a text. A blurry photo of my house. Taken that week. Under it. Hope you know who you're siding with. I thanked her. She left, rattled. Her hands were shaking. That was when I knew I had to end this. Not legally. Not politely. But permanently. So I mailed one last package. Every document. Every video. Every screenshot of every twisted thing he had done. Not just to me, but to Naomi and whoever else that Drive hinted at. I mailed it straight to the local paper. Not for a story, but for the file. Because people like Mark depend on shame. On fear. On silence. And now, someone else has the story. Even if something happens to me. Even if I never say another word. I still check the cameras every night. I don't even know what I'm looking for anymore. Maybe just proof that he's really gone. Or maybe I'm scared he's not. But the worst part? Even if he never shows up again, part of me still lives like he might. And I don't know how to stop.